Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. So, in continuation of our no-till farm tour series, today we are once again hanging out with no-till farming legends Jay and Polly Armour of Four Winds Farm in Gardner, New York. But this time we are discussing how they manage weeds, and especially perennial weeds like quackgrass and Canada thistle. But also we get a little bit of insight into how weed pressure has changed on their farm after nearly 30 years of not tilling. Now, if you appreciate this video or any of our videos, pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook from no-tillgrowers.com, which dives deep into the nitty-gritty details of how systems like Jay and Polly's work. Or you can always support us by joining the Patreon page at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. That support goes to things like sending my partner at no-tillgrowers.com, Jackson Roulette, up to film some of the best no-till farms in the country and create free nerdy farming content like this. So, thanks, and enough for me. Let's get to it with Jay and Polly Armour of Four Winds Farm.
So I like to stress the fact that, well, it's not totally weedless. There are weeds, but the weeds come out really easily. It's just such a joy to grab a hold of that weed and pull on it, pull it out of the ground, and just have the whole root system there dangling. Yeah. You know, if there were a till-based operation where the ground gets rock hard, you go to pull the weeds out, and you get the top part out, but the bottom part is still in the ground. And of course, that bottom part is just going to sprout and grow again, stronger than what you just tried to pull out. Yeah. So, you know, the soil is just it's a naturally loose soil that allows the roots to just come right out of the ground.
If you don't plow and till.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had, you know, we have staff, we have 3 or 4 staff people each year, and many of them have worked on other farms, and they come here and they are amazed at how little of their time they spend weeding. They still have to do some. You know, we have weeds that blow in, things like dandelion or whatever, and then there's the weeds of that indicate good fertility, you know, chickweed and things like lamb's quarter, those things, you know, which I'm kind of happy to see because they tell us that our soil is in good balance. In the hot weather, we get purslane, which I don't mind so much because it's a great mulch, you know, and now that our summers are getting hotter and drier, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have that growing under stuff. Our biggest challenge is perennial weeds that spread by rhizomes. Canada thistle being one of them. I won't call it an Achilles heel, but that's the one thing that a permanent untilled garden situation, that's a real challenge, is because once it's in, if you miss it and you don't get those thistles out, they will spread. And we've got a couple of areas where they've taken over, and I've started on, I mentioned it, the Thistle Eradication Project, where we have now Thistle Thursdays. So every Thursday, our staff just drops what they're doing for an hour, and we just mob dig thistles and get them out. And it seems to be working, but that's if you are growing on raised beds or on permanent beds, and you see Canada thistle come in, nip it in the bud. So perennial weeds is one of our perennial challenges, and when we first started out, what we saw was things like dandelions where they would blow in. That's not a perennial, but it's a weed that comes from new seed that's added. It's not in the weed bank. Things like milkweed also blow in, but our biggest challenge is now Canada thistle. Our neighbor we're surrounded by apple farms, and our neighbor used an herbicide under his apple trees that killed everything but the thistles. And so the thistles said thank you, and they grew madly, and the thistle seed blew in, and we were not really prepared for it. And once it gets established, one thistle plant will send out underground rhizomes. They can be 4 feet down and they can go 40 feet in any direction. And so if you let it get out of hand, if you don't dig it out right away, it really is tough to get rid of. So now we have this bed, more than a bed, it's a a web of thistles here that is about 20 foot, 30 foot in diameter. And this is, here you can see, this is one of the beds that I haven't been working on, but I've been slowly going through with a spading fork and digging it up. And if we keep coming back, this I have not dug, this area I have dug it out. And even over here you can see there's a few remnants that I missed the first time. I may miss them the second time, but by the third time I should pretty much get everything. My goal is to dig the rhizomes out as deep as I can get them, the underground stems, because that's where the plant stores all its energy, is underground. And also because it's all one plant, one giant colony, these plants here could feed those plants over there and vice versa. So we've been trying to keep it at bay by just scuffle hoeing it, but that only removes the surface growth. It doesn't get rid of all the energy that's stored in the rhizomes. So we've been having Thistle Thursdays where our whole crew comes and just digs it out, and we will win because I have won at other patches. You just have to stick at it. Before we developed the thistle issue, our big problem was quack grass or quack grass coming in from the sides, which is similar to Johnson grass. And even after we got it out of the beds, it would still creep in from the edges. And a friend of ours who is a permaculturalist taught us to use comfrey at the edges of the beds. And so we've planted comfrey.
Pretty much the whole farm now.
I'd say 80% of the farm verges have comfrey along the borders. And as long as the comfrey is healthy, it forms like an impenetrable mass of comfrey roots that keep the creeping weeds from the sides, prevents them from coming in. And comfrey itself doesn't spread unless you disturb it. So that's worked really, really well. And you can really see the areas where we don't have it. And that's another project I'm going to work on. Once I eradicate the thistles, I'm going to reinforce the comfrey boundaries.
One of the things we've learned is that not very much will kill comfrey, but what does kill comfrey is repeatedly driving over it.
Yeah.
And since we use a tractor with a bucket to unload the compost on the beds, we're driving over that little bit of comfrey right on the edge.
Yeah.
And so right where the tire tracks are, or the pathways are, going into the growing area, there's no comfrey growing there. There was comfrey planted there originally, but it's not growing there, and that's allowing a little spot where the grasses will find their way in. Yeah, it used to be, like this field here, at one point, was not a straight line. It was sort of more like a V-shaped, where the grasses were just marching inwards.
Yeah. Bees love it.
The other thing that loves it are garter snakes. I think it was in Growing for Market, focused on 4 no-till farms, and they did an article about it, and ours was one of the 4 farms featured. One of the others mentioned that they don't have a slug problem because they have garter snakes, and garter snakes eat slugs. And I read that and I was like, oh,
that's why we don't have
a slug problem.
We used to have a slug problem. We don't anymore. The answer is snakes. I think Elliot Coleman likes to say you don't have a slug problem, you have a duck deficiency. I would say, well, in this situation, you have a snake deficiency. I mow the grass. That's one of my jobs on the farm, is to keep the grass at the verges down. So I, once a week or so, drive around on a little riding mower, and I have to go very slowly because I want to give those snakes time to get back under the comfrey if they're out sunning themselves in the grass. Yeah. And I'll see 3 or 4 of them each time I mow, and I don't know how many I don't see. We pretty much leave it alone. If it gets too big, it starts to flop over onto the garden. So one or the other of us will come along and just kind of step it over and crush it down like this. And that's good because it doesn't really kill it, there's a lot of bees and bumblebees and other beneficial insects that like the flowers. So that doesn't remove it. It's still there for them. Sometimes we go through and cut it down with like a hedge trimmer. You can see some areas, if you were to walk further down, you'd see some spots where we cut it down. But mostly we just leave it there and let it do its thing. It keeps the quack grass from growing into the garden beds, quack grass being another one of those perennials with rhizomes that spreads underground. Where the tractor tires pass as we put the compost down, it does sort of squash the ground and it sets the comfrey back. So we have to kind of, I think if I finish the thistles, I might come in and work on the edges here, these grassy verges. You can see over here where the quack grass is starting to creep in from the side. So we'll reset the comfrey there, replant it. This is a little bit here that's just leaning over, but there should be a comfrey plant here.
All right, I hope you are enjoying this series as much as I am, and if so, like this video if you like this video. If you are not subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you are subscribed, you're awesome. I thought you'd show up eventually. Like I said in the beginning, you can always support more videos like this, as well as the videos I make, by going to no-tillgrowers.com and picking up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook, or a hat, or just go to patreon.com/no-tillgrowers and sign up. This video series is literally a product of your support, so we appreciate it. And if you just want to do it the easy way, hit that super thanks button. Super thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye. And by we'll, I mean all of us. Cutie cutie.
So we didn't really need the CSA anymore, but we were stuck with all these wonderful customers that had been our customers forever, were enthusiastic and supportive, loved our produce, we loved them. How do we not do the CSA but still help and serve these folks? And our interns, our employees at the time,
well, I kept saying,
I don't want to do this CSA anymore.
I don't know why we do this CSA. We don't need the CSA anymore.
We don't need it. And Sam and Aaron, who now run Long Season Farm, said they had been working for us as our staff. Said, well, how about we take it over?